Hello, hello, good people. Hello, welcome back to another car conversation. Even though we are on the cusp of fall, what actually we are supposed to be in fall, it's 90 plus degrees outside in California. So go figure. I'm not complaining though, because we have people that are in Tennessee, Florida, North Carolina that have suffered this week because of the Hurricane Helene. And so not complaining, I'm just staying inside. But today I want to talk to you about the death penalty and how it is addressed in Project 2025 and Agenda 47. Because this week in our country, 5 people were executed. One case that you probably heard about this week was Marcellus Williams. So Marcellus Williams has always claimed his innocence. It has been proven that the evidence did not match up with his DNA, and his family, the community, several people across America, just after learning of his case, and even the prosecuting DA in the case asked for more time to go back and look at the evidence and the DNA because it was incongruent with the sentence that he was serving. So all these things happened, but the governor, the attorney general of the state of Missouri, they decided that they weren't going to do anything to stop it. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and you know what the ultra-conservative Supreme Court did. They basically signed off on it, and he was executed this week. So I thought it would be good for us to look at, especially with this Supreme Court, which you know I have grave concerns about the current Supreme Court, and you know that I believe that the Supreme Court should be expanded immediately. And this is just another reason why. So in Project 2025 and Agenda 47, there are calls for the death penalty to be expanded, to be extended to also include drug dealers and human traffickers. And it may not necessarily stop there. Let me put it that way. It may not necessarily stop there. We already see in certain states, red states, where abortion has been banned, that there is punishment for women, for doctors, for anybody. I'm just going to take the state of Texas, my state of Texas, home state of Texas. In the state of Texas, you can get up to 10 years. And that's anybody, including the mother or anybody that assists in an abortion. Who's to say that at some point one day, if 45 was able to get back into office, that the death penalty would not be extended to people who are seeking abortions, or doctors who perform abortions, or the Uber driver who drives the woman to get the abortion. Who's to say that it wouldn't be extended that far? Well, what we have right now is in Project 2025 calls for the death penalty to be expanded, to execute every person who is currently sitting on federal death row. That's in Chapter 17, page 554. Even though right now in our country, violent crime is down, and I can't remember the year, or is low as whatever year in the past, I can't remember that, but it's significantly lower than it was when 45 was in office, that's for sure. So that's in Project 2025. Now, executing every person who is currently sitting on federal death row. So let me give you a little history on the federal death row. Specifically, since 1976, since 1973, and this is just an overall data, overall information about people on death row. Since 1973, 200 people have been exonerated from death row. So what you should be asking yourself is, are we going to have more Marcellus Williams? Are we going to have more cases like his where innocent people are being executed? Because just because it is written in this document to go in and just wipe everybody out that is on death row. Now, specifically, as it pertains to federal executions, since 1973, now I'm sorry, 1976, since 1976, there have been 16 federal executions. Out of that 16, 13 of those executions happened during 45's administration. So a total of 16 executions since 1976, of federal executions since 1976, and 13 of them occurred just in the 4 years that 45 was in office. And y'all remember, you will probably remember the full-page ad that he took out in the New Yorker, I can't remember the magazine or the newspaper, for the now exonerated 5 to be executed. You probably remember that. He paid $85,000 for that. So it's not like 45 is new to this whole death penalty thing. He was calling for it back in the day for the exonerated 5. 5 young Black and brown teenagers that had been accused of murdering a woman in raping and murdering a woman in Central Park. They were wrongly accused. They have been exonerated. Those 5 young men would have been dead if 45 would have gotten his way. So what do you think is going to happen if 45 is back in office? What do you think is going to happen to these 200, or would have happened to these 200 people that have been exonerated? Basically, what we saw in this country this week in Marcellus Williams' case is legally sanctioned murder. And Gene Hamilton, former Trump official, actually wrote this section of Project 2025. And this person has historically called for and pushed for executions of crimes that did not involve murder. Okay, so this whole segue into drug dealers, human traffickers, and other offenses, this Gene Hamilton has been calling for that to happen for years. And who's to know, who's to say where this goes? Does it go to petty theft? Does it go to the 12, 15-year-old or 13-year-old that's in the grocery store and steals a package of bubble gum? Does it go to the person who has an addiction and to drugs or alcohol, and they steal something because of their addiction? Does it go to addiction? Do they suddenly outlaw addiction? And instead of arresting people and getting them into rehab, getting them some help, they're just executed. So we don't know, because this is something that has been written over years, but this is something that they're adding to and making up as they go, just to roll back freedoms and protections for Americans that have been long-standing. So Marcellus Williams' case, in his case, you had the state prosecutors, you had the community, you had his family, you had everyone saying, look, the evidence is pointing to this, and he's always maintained his innocence, by the way. The evidence is pointing to the fact that his DNA was not what was found at the scene. There's not enough evidence to say concretely that this person is guilty of this crime. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And what do you think the ultra right conservative Supreme Court did? The majority of the Supreme Court. Now, our 3 that usually dissent, they dissented, but the majority ruled, and Marcellus Williams was killed in the state of Missouri. Legally sanctioned murder, basically modern day lynching. So America is the only fully developed nation in this world that still uses the death penalty. And guess what category it puts us in? It puts us in the category with China, with Iran, with Iraq, and other countries that still practice this heinous punishment. I would encourage you all, like I always do, to watch Bad Faith. Watch where this originated, how this started, how this mindset was spread, how certain people were targeted in this whole MAGA movement, who's behind it, which organizations are behind it. And that will let you know why we have what we have in front of us right now, why we are facing what we are facing right now in this country. I also would encourage you to watch The Handmaid's Tale. Watch The Handmaid's Tale. And I've been saying this for years as well. After I finally watched The Handmaid's Tale, this whole notion of executing people, moving from if you murdered someone, then you're on death row. Project 2025 and Agenda 47, they want to move us to other offenses, and how far that will go. Maybe the offense is you just being you. You just being you. You just being part of the LGBTQI community. You just being the person that wants to protest against, the government going too far, encroaching too far, and crossing the lines in regards to our freedoms. Maybe you just want to protest. Maybe you are, of the trans community, and somehow it's found out, or you're outed, or you're just trying to live your life and be yourself. And then that's what's been added to Project 2025 in regards to people who should be executed. So my point is, there's a lot of people, I'm not going to say a lot of people. There are some people in this country that seem to not be too concerned or too worried about where this whole Project 2025 thing is going to go. But I can tell you the groups that it is going, this one specifically is going to harm the most. Is going to be Black and brown communities. So Black MAGA, I'm talking to you. Brown MAGA, I'm talking to you. Poor white communities, I'm talking to you. Anybody that cannot obtain a good attorney. Financially, you cannot obtain a good attorney. I'm talking to you. Because let me tell you who is not routinely sentenced to death. That's rich people, wealthy people. How many wealthy people do you know on death row? How many wealthy people can you name that have ever been sentenced to death? I'll wait. So all you people talking about, oh, this doesn't apply to me, and I don't like to be political, and I don't like to get into this and that, and I think that this is just being blown out of proportion, and this whole talk about Project 2025 and Agenda 47 is hyperbole, and people are blowing it up to make it more than it actually is. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're literally trying to bring you reality, the reality we're facing right now in this election, and these people. And I'm not just talking about 45. There's a machine behind 45 and JD Vance. I need you to understand that. There are several organizations. There's a machine, a very wealthy machine as well, behind these two individuals that are trying to get in office. And that machine's agenda is Project 2025. And that machine's agenda includes expanding the death penalty. And we don't know how far that's going to go. So in Marcellus Williams' case, I'd like to say that the murderer is still out there. The person who committed that heinous crime is still out there, and Marcellus Williams is dead. That's where we are right now. And also, we already know where 45, his feelings about the death penalty. We already know now the ultra MAGA majority Supreme Court feels in regards to the death penalty. We know clearly what's written in Agenda 47 and Project 2025 in regards to the death penalty. So who's to say how far they expanded and where they go if they are given the opportunity? Our job is to block them and to stop their opportunity, to prevent them of having the opportunity to execute more people in this country and expanding the death penalty to whomever, to whatever category they want to include, because that's where this is going. There's a saying that we have in Texas, you give, there's a word that we put in there, you give, I'll just use fool. You give a fool a rope, they want to be a cowboy all of a sudden. If we give these people an inch of rope, they want to be cowboys. They want to be cowboys and they want to rule the world. And that brings me to my next segment on Project 2025. Stay tuned.